Welcome to Master Your Market. I'm Chris Ashmore. How often do you post on social media? And how often is often enough? Well, today's guest is on the receiving end of my annoying questions about digital marketing. Moby Siddique is the CEO of RedPandas, a digital content and marketing agency which he sold, but he still leads. Great interview with lots of insights, including head versus heart social media posts. Well, Moby, thank you for joining me on this podcast. First big question is about mistakes when it comes to social media marketing. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people make?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. It's good to see you again, mate. Well, honestly, I'd probably do it in two parts: the tactical side, and I want to answer more from a marketing perspective, not just social media marketing, because I think it applies for both. And I have this all the time, Chris. So I've got a whole team, and they always come to me and Moby, I've got this client problem or this campaign and this strategy. And I find myself, I've been saying this thing for years. And it's really this, right? Like anytime you're looking at anything, think about who's it for and what do they give a damn about. Now, in terms of what they give a damn about, to go a little bit deeper, what are the pain points they are experiencing? So it's much easier to sell a painkiller than a vitamin, Chris. Like I don't know about you, when I need a painkiller, I can't find one, but I've got vitamin bottles that are just expired because I won't use them. And if I can give you a quick example, because I think tactics are really important here. A client of mine sent an email, right? They do social media marketing, and they sent an email around how to master brand social media marketing. And I said, guys, no, that's not it. Like that's just selling you. Think about the customer's pain point. So if I'm selling social media marketing, I'd say something like, are you struggling to get on top of every network? Do you have enough time to post? Are you neglecting social media when you shouldn't? So really, again, if you just put that lens on, every piece of marketing collateral you put out, it will change the game. Who's it for? What do they give a damn about? And what are their pain points? How can I help?
That's fantastic, because I see a lot. I use LinkedIn a lot, or I'm on there a lot, versus say Facebook or Instagram. And
Same.
on LinkedIn, I see there's a lot of posts about, look at us, we've just won an award, or look at me, I'm at the beach, or I'm in a airport lounge in London. But it's kind of, well, good on you, and I feel a bit insecure in comparison, stuck in my little studio here all the time. But it doesn't, other than look at me, it doesn't really do much more than that. And there's so many posts like that. Do people do it because it's easier to do, and they feel they've just got to post something? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. And honestly, LinkedIn, we can talk multiple questions around LinkedIn because that is my network of choice as well. On LinkedIn, I always sort of say, like, you have to think about, okay, for example, like if LinkedIn was a wedding planner, what table would they put you on? So if anyone's ever been married before and, you're getting your tables organized, you put the families here, and then you're like, okay, well, Mark might go well with Murray because they're both in real estate, and Sally might, so LinkedIn is trying to figure out what wedding table to put you on when you put your content out. So if you're just putting random stuff, now I love a good selfie, and selfie is one of those like hacks, like you personalize yourself, but you're not there we have our own friends, Chris, right? We're not there to just talk about what we did on the weekend and stuff. You have to be known for a number of themes, or I like to say content buckets. So for example, I run a digital marketing agency and sales coaching business, and we do HubSpot as well. So my buckets might be lead gen, customer journey mapping, CRMs, and maybe leadership because I run a business. So what are my buckets? And then have a good mix of heart content and head content. So head content is like the tactical stuff, like 5 tips on how to close more sales. But the stuff, you have to know how to play the LinkedIn game. The problem is when you go too far on heart or too far on head content. So heart content might be like, something that's like heartwarming. Maybe you spotlight one of your team members, or you talk about, a story that really humbled you, and you have a photo of yourself, whatever. But you have to have that balance. You have to know in what you're going to do there. Otherwise, you're just going to post once in a blue moon and not really have a target to go after.
Would it be fair to say then that the heart content it's showing your personality and the head stuff is showing your credibility?
Yeah, exactly. You have to stand out a little bit. I spoke to a LinkedIn expert years ago, and she called it, she was Canadian, and she called it Tickle Trunk. Apparently, there's a cartoon called, it's not weird, it's some Canadian thing. And her thing was like coffee, right? So like, she would like always have different coffee mugs and stuff. There's another guy called Luke Matthews who's a expert in LinkedIn, and I suggest your viewers follow him if you're interested in LinkedIn. And he's always talking about being a digital nomad and pizza, you know, that's his thing. For me, one thing that I didn't mean to do this, but like in a lot of my videos, I like to wear Nike Jordans, like Nike Jordans and old school kicks. And people have started to comment on my kicks. I'm like, oh, okay, is this becoming a bit of a sub brand for me? But you're absolutely right,
Yep.
Chris. Like the heart content helps you resonate, makes you. We're being social. Like how do you be social and human? And some people neglect that side too much as well. So I know people don't want to put themselves out there. I know they don't want to be vulnerable, but it is social. You have to play the game to get people to know and like you before they trust you with your business stuff.
Why do you focus on LinkedIn more than the others? Well, why is LinkedIn good for you?
Honestly, Chris, I can attribute so much success to LinkedIn. I would say at least $500,000 worth of business, at least $200,000 worth of business in the last couple of years, I can attribute to LinkedIn. Even
Wow.
my business acquisition, so our business got acquired 2 years ago, I can attribute that solely directly to through a LinkedIn conversation. And for me, it's an opportunity. Firstly, Chris, it's actually one of the most underrated networks for especially B2B and
Yep.
consultants and professional services. Most people on LinkedIn are consuming, they're not contributing, they're not creating. So I don't know the percentage, I know it's single
Yep.
digit, but if you think of
Yep.
all the people on LinkedIn, single digits version of them are just posting and everyone else is consuming. So there's so
Mm.
much reach available. And it truly is I mean, it's free, Chris. Like, why wouldn't you, be posting about what you do and what you're passionate about? And the key thing is cadence, which we can talk about. But for us, it's honestly been a game changer.
Right. Well, let's talk about cadence. How often do you? Well, how often do you do it, and how often should we all be doing it? Posting, I mean.
Two years ago, I made a conscious effort. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna post 3 days a week, come hell or high water. And yeah, I've had a couple of
Yep.
weeks where I've, dropped the ball, like we're all humans, and I've had some weeks where I've done 5 or 6 posts. But honestly, Chris, three for me is a minimum, like minimum. And I'm still not happy with three. If you can, especially if you're early stage and you're really trying to grow and you have more time than clients, I'd say every single day. I'm actually, upscaling and upskilling myself on AI right now, so I can actually try to do it daily. But I'd say a minimum of 3 times per week. And like I said before, balance your head content and heart content, balance your content about yourself and content about your, speciality or your area of expertise.
Well, 3 days a week, it doesn't seem overwhelming so much, I
Yet people
suppose.
don't
It's
do it.
doable.
Like it's the
Yeah.
amount of clients I've told just do it three. I've told them like just start once a week. It's like yeah, Moby, I'll get around to it. You're right, Chris. It's not hard to do 3 times per week.
And who are your clients? Who's your target market?
So for us specifically, like anyone who is trying to solve a lead generation problem, essentially. Anyone who, and typically for us, our ideal client is they've tried SEO and they've tried all things that used to work, Chris, now no longer work anymore from a lead generation point of view. So they're coming to solve a problem and they want some strategy and direction, and more importantly, execution. And on the sales side, it's one of the big things that we're advocates of is customer journey mapping. So if you have an
Mm.
organization, a sales organization, even if you're in sales, right, you should have mapped visually and ideally in a program, a CRM like a HubSpot or a Salesforce, your entire customer journey. Because unless you do that, you're going to have holes. So we either help people plug those holes in their customer journey map and sales process or on the lead generation side of things.
For someone like me who works on their own or with a small team, business coaches, solopreneurs, professional service providers. In a nutshell, what should their marketing plan look like?
So I think marketing plan is interesting. I think there's a tactical element and there's a marketing plan element. Like the tactical side, and I'm not going to flog the horse again because I've discussed LinkedIn at length. I will say
Yep.
everyone wants to be a thought leader, but nobody wants to do the work. So it's not just LinkedIn. You need to be creating more content, far more content than you think. So what you're doing, Chris, is perfect, right? You're educating, you're bringing experts, you're giving that that knowledge and a thought leadership back, right? And it's far more than we often think. Like even I can talk about what we do, and I'm still not happy with the amount of content we do. That's tactical. I think on the strategic side, because it's not just like the day-to-day side, you need a framework. So, are you familiar with EOS or scaling up, Chris?
No.
Cool. Okay, cool, cool.
Scaling
So,
up, scaling up in a generic sense, do you
there's
mean?
a framework called
Or
scaling up, and there's another framework,
okay.
and I would recommend scaling up more for smaller businesses, but essentially it makes you really, really intentional, Chris. So it's like, okay, they call it the entrepreneur operating system. And it's got frameworks for, and it's got all templates there for you. So, we all have our goals, but I'd hazard a guess that a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, whatever, consultants, they haven't written them all out, or they haven't written them for 3 years, or they've done it for 6 months. So it's actually got templates in terms of what are you trying to achieve at a 5-year level, 3-year level, 6-month level, quarterly level? Who is your target audience? And for me, there's like a particular tool in EOS, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's like, this will resonate with you, Chris. Every consultant or service provider, if they don't have this, they should have this, their secret sauce, right? Their way. So the Chris Ashmore way of doing XYZ, right? Even if it's the same as everyone else, it has to be positioned in a way where this is our way, trademark. That's not really a trademark type of thing. So a lot of consultants, service providers understand that, but they don't communicate it. And in EOS, it shares a really cool tool where you visually represent it. And the analogy I like to, this is not from the book, but the analogy I like to give is when your clients and customers come to you, they want a destination. They're trying to get to a destination and they're approaching you for the map. So if you could visually show them, it's like, hey, dear customer, this is the map. You're not going to say it like that, but you're showing them this is the map to get to your destination. Here's what life with us looks like first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. How powerful is that, Chris, as a selling tool? Like visually, super powerful. So I'm just giving you one tactic, right? But that is one tactic
Yep.
from EOS. I mentioned the tactical thing. You got to create more content, but from a strategic lens, following a system like, again, I recommend EOS, and it's the book called Traction actually talks about this. I've got it sitting here right in front of me, actually. It's always next to me, this book by Gene Wickman, if you're watching the video version of this podcast.
Yep.
For smaller businesses, I'd definitely recommend Traction.
I'll throw that book into the show notes that people can click on. SEO, that's something that does my head in. I don't quite understand it, but it changes all the time, doesn't it? What are some of the best practices when it comes to SEO?
I'm smiling as you say that because I've gotten so much grief on TikTok on this. Like my most viral posts are me having wars with people on SEO. Uh, Mind you, Chris, I've been in the industry now for close to 20 years, right? So I know what I'm talking about. SEO now is an art, not a science. So if you're paying for and Chris, you mentioned like you don't understand it. Like it's Google's value proposition, because when we're talking about SEO, we're talking about coming up in Google, has always been if someone has a question, if someone has a query concern, let's give them that. Let's give them quality content. It's always been that. And in the early years, Google wasn't very good at that. So it relied on signals, it relied on backlinks and keywords in the right places. And people used to do things like have a keyword but make it white font so you couldn't see it on the page. They used to game the system. But Google got smarter and smarter and smarter, right? So now that's why I say it's an art form. It's not a science anymore. If you're paying some quote unquote guru who's sitting in a attic somewhere and he's doing stuff that you can't understand and he's selling you mumbo jumbo, that's a red flag. You're getting ripped off. It's not like electrical
Right.
work where you're paying for something you don't understand. You are getting ripped off. So I've got clients where we've focused on content and doing 3 articles per week, following a framework which I can talk to you about, and their Google Web Vitals scores. So Google has these scores you can check from a technical perspective. They failed them.
Yeah.
They have less than 50. They have failed them, yet they're outranking everyone because they have good content. They're educating the market, and yes, there are some technical things like a good user experience, a good website, but it's common sense stuff. So
Right. So, I mean, the point for Google is for them to, when you do a Google search, they want to direct you to the most relevant and the best quality content. Is that the point for them, that if they're providing you with rubbish based upon, say, I don't know,
yeah,
algorithms that
people
some
trying to game,
smart
yeah.
asses, yeah, that's not good for them. So it's poorly, it shows them in a poor light. So what you're saying is you just have quality content that people engage with. That's the best way to go about doing your SEO.
It's the 80/20 rule, Chris. Like if you're in an industry where, say no one's done any SEO and all the competitors are really, really bad, and yeah, you put some keywords, you're probably going to rank. But most businesses, Chris, they're in competitive markets. They're in competitive markets. So the 80/20 rule is going to be creating content and having a good user experience on your website. So website is fast, it's not clunky, it works well on mobile, but these are not things you need to pay an SEO agency 2, 3K a month for, because I don't know what they're doing for that money. But you're absolutely right. It's about quality content and giving them a strong value proposition.
Can I get ChatGPT to write my articles? Is AI becoming a big thing now?
Absolutely, you can. A lot of people. Let's quickly address some of the concerns, right? Like AI doesn't
Yep.
sound anything like me. I've tried it, and it was garbage. Or I'm worried that Google will penalize me. Really, Chris, that comes down to education. So, like I've got a full-time content manager we've got a marketing team at RedPandas. It's not big, it's two people in total plus me. And one of those persons, he does 3 articles per week. Like full-time I hire him to do 3 articles per week. And he's been around from since before the ChatGPT era. Now with ChatGPT and AI, he's at least doubled his output. So this one full-timer, Chris, he does 3 articles per week. He does a newsletter per week. What is else? He manages 2 podcasts. So we've got 2 podcasts at our agency, all the social media posting, and people, they don't understand how one person does this. So actually, as a shameless plug, we actually have a 8-week AI course that actually teaches people to use AI in content marketing specifically. It's currently closed right now, but if you share in the show
Yep.
notes, there's a wait list that people can jump onto. But the point is, if you've tried it and failed, it's just that you just haven't had the right help or you haven't had the right prompts yet. Um,
Right.
and from a Google perspective as well, there's no issues from Google. Like if you're going to use a lazy prompt that copies someone else's content, then yeah, Google's probably not going to like that. But it's all about the prompting and priming.
Yeah, I'm using ChatGPT a lot with writing show notes and even writing scripts but I mean, I would never copy and paste because what it provides is a bit academic. It doesn't provide that jus, that kind of personality. So I use it, but then rewrite it. But it does help a hell of a lot, particularly with the show notes. But you should never start your show notes for a podcast with, in this episode, ... you're just wasting space. You get straight into the main point in the first sentence, like a good, journalism 101. But it has helped me. Speaking of podcasting, you mentioned you've got 2 podcasts. This is a leading question because I'm a podcast producer and I know how wonderful they are. But for you, how important have they been in terms of content marketing?
I think after LinkedIn, it's probably our biggest source of leads. Actually, no, sorry, that's a lie.
Okay.
I'd say after LinkedIn and our content, like that we write on our website, our blogging. But here's the thing with podcasting. I started in 2016 and I did it religiously for 2 years or 3 years. And then I stopped because I was like, I'm feeling like I'm not getting the most out of it. And what I was able to articulate, and when I came back after 2 years, not only did we do one podcast, we did two. So what was the difference? The difference was I adopted a hub and spoke strategy. So as much as I would like to think that people will listen to me for half an hour, I'm probably not that interesting, right? But the
Oh, I don't
shorts.
know.
Oh, thanks, Chris. Well, we know each other now, so maybe you might find it. But the spokes, right? So the hub is the podcast. The
Yeah.
spokes are all the bits of content you can repurpose. So from one
Right. Yep.
podcast, we create. Well, that's fun. One podcast, we create 5 snippets for
Yep.
social media. And then each of those snippets goes on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. We create emails out of them, and it also feeds article ideas. And then the article ideas,
Gotcha.
that's why I
Yep.
say it's not like it's a flywheel. The article ideas will often feed the podcast. So I think we
Yep.
calculated from one podcast, we create 56 bits of content. So
Fantastic.
I always say, do not create a piece of content. Like, call it lazy/efficient. I don't create any piece of content unless I know I can create 2 to 3 bits of content out of that one piece of content.
Right. Well, that's fantastic. Before we go, I could talk to you all day about this. Maybe I should get you on the show again. But before we go, Moby, any final advice or inspiration for those who are running their business or want to grow their business more particularly?
Yeah, I thought you might ask me this, and I really hate fluffy answers. I try to pride myself on giving tactical stuff, so I thought I'd share that with our listeners today. So the first one would be, go ahead and do yourself a favor and buy this book. If you can see the video version, it's called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. And we base all of the content we create at RedPandas on this. I read 2 books a month. 2 books a month, and for me, it's the best marketing book on earth. It will teach you how to create the types of content that invoke trust and therefore sales. The second one, just to recap, get into the habit of creating 3 to 5 times a week content, because not only will it help you create better content, but what I found, Chris, is even my sales emails, even when I pitch, like, it just makes me more creative, and at the same time, it keeps you fresh and up to date, and outleap your competitors. And finally, and this is more for people who don't come from a sales background, I feel like people who start businesses from a sales background, they're good at this, but everyone else, technical people, engineers, even marketers, we're not good at making the ask. I call it making the ask. So
Right.
especially in the early days, like if you're starting a business, give yourself a number, whether it's 3 or 5 or 10, whether it's one, make the ask every day. Like, hey, and don't just ask people for a coffee. That's lazy. Like, hey, we do this, we solve this problem. Could this help? Or could you come onto my show? Or, whatever it is, or a partnership, make the ask. So if you're looking to grow, I'd say those key 3 things is definitely something that I would tell myself if I could go back, 10 years or so.
That's fantastic advice. And I tell you one good thing for that. I hadn't heard of that. You've thought of that expression, but make the ask. Podcasting is a good way to do that. Asking someone on your show, you've made that connection, and then things can develop from there.
Absolutely.
Sorry to have the final word there, maybe.
It's your show,
But,
Chris. Your show, please.
Maybe. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to be in touch again. I'm sure I will. But for now, all the best.
Pleasure. Thanks, Chris.